Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Life Talks with myself, Michael Bacchioni. Today I have someone who I call a friend, Gerald Ford. He is one of 73 certified master chefs and captain of the American National Culinary Team USA with stops in Michelin-starred restaurants. The Moulin de Mougins, am I saying that correctly?
Moulin de Mougin.
You say it better than me. And
Well,
11 Madison Park. Chef Ford has established himself as a professional who is focused, driven, innovative, and organized beyond obsessive. Throughout his 26 years in food service, Chef Ford was part of the opening team in the Mandarin Oriental in Columbus Circle, New York City. He served as part of the opening team of several restaurants in New York State and has spent his last 10 years working in platinum level private clubs in the role of executive chef, culinary director, executive sous chef, and sous chef. Earning medals at the highest level of international competition and the Culinary Olympics, Chef Ford has proven his resourcefulness and honed his leadership, leading and developing the best chefs in the world. You can find Gerald Ford on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And he has a link tree, which I'll provide in the video here. But that's a little bit from you. And I also want to dive into where we met, which was grounding camp through Elliot Hulse. And when I reached out to you, I'm starting my podcast, and I wanted to have you on, and you replied, "I would be happy to, brother. Everybody starts somewhere, and I really appreciate you, helping me grow my channel." And I guess we can start out. I mean, based on where we met, what brought you to grounding camp?
oh man, it's just an epic experience. I think we live in a very heady world where we tend to get stuck upside in our melon. And the first time I heard Elliot talk about getting back into the body, it resonated, and I didn't have any idea what that meant. And I knew I had to go to grounding camp, and I went to my first one in 2016. And I've tried to go back as often as I could. This last year, in COVID, like it seemed like the perfect time to do it, like the perfect time to get back in the body and to get out there and, well, shake and scream.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I liked how where we did the exercise, yeses are yes and nos are nos. And I think that's a really important thing, that everyone needs to have their own boundaries in themselves. To not be afraid to say no and not to be afraid to say yes in a loving way. I think definitely I've noticed in our culture that the ability to say no is almost frowned upon. You can't disagree, but I think it's so powerful when you have the ability to say no to someone and strongly disagree with them, but actually have compassion and love them at the same time. And I think that's a skill. And I think you have to have practice saying no or saying the wrong thing. As you develop it, uh, then it becomes almost like a superpower that your idea, you're actually focusing on the ideas rather than the person. And so much of a world of identity politics where we attach ourselves to a label rather than focusing on what brings us together. And what you've done, right? Food brings us together. And I think that's a really cool thing. Maybe you can go into what led you to become a chef.
Oof. I mean, that was so long ago. I was 14 years old, and well, actually, that's not even the beginning of the story. The beginning of the story is my parents got divorced when I was young. I was like 6 years old. I turned 41 this year. Um, so when I was six, my parents got divorced, and my mom was working multiple jobs. Right, uh, nothing new, not a strange story at all. But if I wanted to eat something more than the box of mac and cheese, I kind of had to figure out how to cook, and then I kind of had to figure out how to embellish things. I made some awful things, in the meantime. But I grew up in a family that was all about food, German, Polish. Um, that's my grandma was German, my grandpa was Polish, and
I know
um,
one word, Polish tak. Yes.
yeah, I know a few. I know how to say some terrible things, and "Itchy dumut spach." It's get your ass in bed. It's
I like
uh,
that.
that was what my grandma used to say, like get your ass in bed. And so like I grew up in a family that was not only loving of food, but pretty big family. My mom has three brothers, three sisters, and then the extended family just was enormous. So food kind of became like this centering experience for the whole family. Everybody would get together for Thanksgiving, for the overcooked turkey at grandma's, and for the banging ham at Christmas with kielbasa and sauerkraut. And just these huge family experiences. So loving food, and I needed to figure out how to cook.
And that's what got you into it to start out.
Yeah, I mean, I started cooking around the house, and then my mom was trying to get rid of me on the weekend a little bit because I think she got sick of having me around the house, wanted a little time to herself. And she signed me up for some continuing education classes at like the local college. And I would go on Saturdays and I'd hang out with all of these. It was kind of crazy. All these couples that were like 35 and up. And I was by far the youngest at 14, and they would have local chefs come in and teach something. So like one week they had this great cake maker from where I grew up around the Detroit area. She came in, and then another week we had this master gardener Florence come in and talk about gardening and herbs and cooking with herbs. But one of them was a certified master chef, and his name was Ed Janos. And he came in, he roasted a chicken, made mashed potatoes, green beans, and we made gravy. And that was like our day. And it was mind blowing, like mind altering experience, right? Because, like I said, turkey was always overcooked in my family growing up. And not only that, but the mashed potatoes were always a little lumpy. And gravy was like pasty white with chunks,
Mhm.
like that was green beans came out of a can overcooked to no end whatsoever. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, wow, this chicken, we brined it, had this beautiful crispy skin on the outside. It was moist, it was beautiful, it was delicious. The potatoes were 50% fat and 50% potato. They were amazing. And these
Perfect.
things were like silky. And the gravy was this brown, rich, smooth sauce, not just like this wallpaper paste that you would spackle the wall to
Yeah.
fix holes. And I remember stepping back like, wow, this could really be a profession. This really could be a path. And I would say within a week or two of that particular event, I was like, you know what? I want to be a certified master chef when I grow up.
And that was at 14.
I was at 14. Yeah.
Right at 14, you knew that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah. I was chomping at the bit to go to work too.
That's awesome.
Yeah. My dad programmed me with a solid work ethic, like I knew early on that like I was going to need to work.
Yeah. And I like that quote you have up behind the rest of it, live your rest of life as a champion, Muhammad Ali.
Yep. Don't quit, suffer now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think discipline is something that, at least in my life, the way I've learned is I've slacked off a lot in my life. And, as I've gotten older, I've come across people like, for example, David Goggins. You just spoke about before we started this recording, you spoke about Gary V. And I think it's worth repeating the quote that you had brought up. But, I'm seeing older now. I forgot the quote exactly, but there's two types of regret. The regret
The one
of,
you choose and the one that chooses you.
yeah, for sure. There's so much power in really putting yourself, like waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, or, really just busting your ass, and not for just for the sake of busting your ass, because I think in this world where just there's a difference between busyness and actually really putting your heart and soul into what you love. And then the work it becomes enjoyable rather than banging your head against the wall doing a job that you absolutely hate, which I'm sure there's plenty of people out there. I think that you would agree, I'm sure that, that's what made you work so hard, is that you love to combine different foods together, and to really, that passion for it is what goes hand in hand with the discipline. It becomes it's as I'm saying, like, even just having these conversations this is what I love to do. I love to learn about people and to talk to people. And you find a way to get paid for it is the most beautiful thing. You can bust your ass all day and do something that you actually love, rather than just, look at the punch clock and, okay, do something that you hate.
I always looked at it as like you can choose to do the work for yourself and take all the risk, or you can make somebody else rich, like it is what it is. Like somebody's going to benefit from your work. And I think most people don't ever really spend any time determining their own value in their self. It's now this is what 27 years later after, setting my goal to become a certified master chef. I passed the exam when I was 37. So in 2017, now my business, a large component of my business is coaching. And that's what I spend a lot of time doing, is talking about, finding your value, once you determine your value and you realize, well, 15 bucks an hour sucks, 22 bucks an hour sucks. I mean, you want to talk about what I think of myself hourly. I mean, it's 200 to 400 bucks an hour is really how I like to value myself. And actually, I still think that's probably still a bargain. I just haven't had the balls to ask for more yet.
Yes, absolutely. There's almost this idea that to say that you're worth, like it's your ideas that are worth it. This idea of, for example, the minimum wage. It's just, sure, establish where the bottom line is, but think bigger, dream bigger, dream bigger. And not just for the paycheck. You do what you do, I would believe, because you're providing value. It's the more the value, the money comes secondarily. If you're focused on the money, how much money can I get out of this? It's not the same. And I think that's an important distinction.
It becomes an empty hole, right?
Yes.
Like there's no substance to it. Like you may have the money, but you certainly aren't fulfilled in any other way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And what you said before, the Gary Vee quote, that's another thing I think is really, it's so true. I mean, either you're going to build the biggest building, you're going to tear somebody else's down. And I see this in politics and, religion or identity politics, where stop focusing on X or Y, a person. Focus on what value can you bring in your center of influence and grow that. And then you're not focused on anything out there. And you're giving off your own energy.
Well, absolutely. I think exactly. You can tear other people's buildings down, or you can build your building up. And, you just make the city a richer place if everybody has bigger, better, taller buildings. You know what I mean? Like the city isn't thriving if your building's tall and a skyscraper and everybody else is torched to the ground, right? Like, yeah. Metaphorically speaking and reality speaking, right? If you're destroying other people's businesses in order for your business to be successful, is the landscape really thriving? I don't think so. I think. Go ahead.
I think it's it's jealousy, which is, there's a culture of just I think it's so deep and it's hard to really point in one place, but our culture embraces negativity. It's almost so, I just watched a video recently on Joe Rogan with Kevin Hart, and it's a clip, and it's like, he says such a great example. It's like, we're in a culture now where it's like, you say, I love this movie, Titanic, I love the movie. The other person around you says, yeah, I love Titanic. And then somebody else has to come around and say, I fucking hate that movie. And it's like, there's almost, and then somebody else, and then that negativity breeds negativity. And it's so much easier to say that than really to share your own ideas, share your own positivity. And really, I've heard that and I'm guilty of it too. It's like, there's this idea of I've always heard positivity, but it really is true. And it's so simple, just really being in that positive lens, inspiring people, and really that center coming from yourself. That's hard to do. But as you feed that, it really becomes, your world opens up as you go into that positive mindset in ways that it's so inexplicable. And it's so simple. That's the whole thing, is that I think I've heard the truth is simple. The seeker is complicated. Everybody's looking for that specific way, but to really trust yourself, it's simple, but it's not.
100%. Simplicity is as complicated as it gets.
Yeah.
We tend to overthink it. I think the big struggle that we face is that most humans don't actually know what real pain or suffering is. We don't, as a culture, know how to suffer. We don't know how as a culture to struggle, right? I've been diving into neuroscience lately, and it's funny how the body interprets stress and pain, right? Inside the brain is basically a chunk called the amygdala, right? And fear, that's the organ that senses fear and reacts to fear. And then what happens when you are afraid, right? When you become afraid, your lymph system doses your body with adrenaline, and all of your blood flows from your brain to the rest of your body, to your organs, to your limbs, in order to react, right? and then you can't think, right? You're not
Mm,
thinking, you're no longer a high operating organism, you're now a reptile, right?
yes.
You are fighting, or you're running away. And that's just an unavoidable circumstance related to stress and fear. Now, that was great when we were being chased by saber-toothed tigers, by bears, by when our life was truly in jeopardy. But we don't experience that anymore. We
Mm,
don't suffer. So there's nothing to tame that in our lives. So all of a sudden now, when you hear somebody's, you know, nitpicking or back talking at the water cooler, right? And in your work environment at the water cooler, somebody's, just nitpicking, or
mm,
somebody takes a stance that's, politically against what your stance is. Now your brain is on overdrive and you're reacting as though you're being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, even though you're not. But there's been nothing to buffer that reaction. You go from 0 to 100 because you have no idea what 1 through 99 is.
mm.
And it's
Yeah.
just this instant reaction of like overdrive, like, no. And
Yes.
like, whoa, 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 I just asked for salted butter. It's cool,
Yeah.
like, I just want salt in my butter. That's not okay. Hold on.
Yeah. And you know what? Yeah, absolutely. It's reactionary versus, I don't know if you've read, I'm sure you have, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, where he
Yeah.
talks about responding versus reacting, and personality based versus character based. And there's that very small line. And I've noticed that too. When you have, it's 1/10,000th of a second to respond.
Mhm.
And in that is life. So what I mean is, it's either you're reacting, I need the butter, or people will expose themselves. So rather than fighting,
Mhm.
um, because we all have that amygdala, that reptilian, that's there. So if I say, you're bad, or I'm reacting to theirs, and based on how they respond to me, if they don't react to that, oh, I'm aware of that because that's in us. I don't react to that. I respond
Mhm.
to that. There's so much power in that 1/10,000th of a second to allow people to also. We live in a world where there's a lot of amygdala people. So, and it's those who are aware of that to respond to that. That's actually one of the ways that we can heal it, right?
Mhm.
So it's not them versus us. And but yeah, I think that's really it's what you said, neuroscience. That's
Yeah,
what.
neuroscience. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no,
just
I think yeah.
brain chemistry. It's all in how you react, and it's all in how you help yourself not to react. Part of what I work with my clients directly on is short circuiting that impulse, taking that moment to breathe, and you put yourself back into, human state before you attack the human that, that has this really insignificant problem, and make much more problem come from your reaction. You
Yeah.
can set things on fire really quickly, and it's just the dumb thing to do.
Yeah,
So
I have some experience working in a restaurant.
most people do.
Yeah,
Most of
and
it's challenging.
I remember being in that high speed environment, and when it would be really busy at night. I mean, it was just pizza places, but between that window between 5 and 8 o'clock, I mean, it was go go go. There, if you got caught up in someone saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. Oh, don't talk to me. You're not going to last in the restaurant industry. I'm sure you would agree, right? So it's going when it's busy. You it's not to get caught up into that emotional amygdala response.
Right.
And as time has gone on, when time went on in that, it was just yeah, it's not me personally. It's about getting the job done, and
Mhm.
making sure that the quality of the food was right, and it wasn't about me versus that. And in our world, it's this. I see a lot of pride, and um, definitely something that we should be overcome. And you're inspiring me to dive into that too, because when we understand how our brain works, we don't. That's where the power is. It's understanding. It's not reacting, for sure.
Well, I mean, a lot of this where I'm at now came from recognizing that, right? Seeing that before service, you can be having a conversation, you can be all tied up thinking about your life outside of work and thinking about your girlfriend or your wife or your what you're going to do after work. You're going to party, where you're going to go drinking, and then all of a sudden you're in work and you get into these flow states. And that's really what kind of led to my interest in neuroscience, is when you start understanding what you can accomplish in a flow state and what you do accomplish in a flow state, then you start understanding about like peak flow states and triggers to get there, triggers that come out of it. And then it becomes a matter of performance. So for me, it was kind of taking that real world everyday experience and recognizing there's something to this. Like I see it, like my brain shuts off, my body does exactly what it needs to do. And it was that studying, and it was becoming understanding and basically cognizant of the flow states that helped me be successful in the Master Chef exam, by all means, which is a fairly grueling experience, but it's all about getting out of your head and getting into your
Mm,
body. And
yes.
and that's we could tie it back down around to how we met at grounding camp, right? Like, I mean, I'm wearing my shirt just
I
because
was gonna wear my shirt, but yeah.
I'm wearing my shirt, but on the back it says the mind is the body.
Yes.
And we as a society have forgotten that. We live in our heads, we live in front of our screens, and we're satiated by this culture that keeps us out of our body. But there's so much satisfaction in work. There's so much satisfaction in the body, in doing the work, in feeling the struggle, and then in the accomplishment that comes from it. It's a completely different, it's a completely different high. It's
Yeah.
who is the guy? Greg Platt. Greg,
Yeah.
yeah, Greg.
Yeah. 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 I know what you're
It's
talking
it's
about.
the greatest drug that there is, right? You don't need to shoot up, you don't need to do anything else. Like, it's just this rewarding high. It's the pump. It's this body experience. It's this wholesomeness inside of overcoming the hurdle and doing it physically.
Yeah.
And it's it that right now is just such a relevant message. Get out of your head, get into your body, and go do something.
Yeah, and when you get into those flow, I actually I've been really reflecting on words lately so much more. And for example, and like in the word influence, inner fluidity, it's fluid, inner fluence. And as you get into that fluid state, what does it mean? That's someone who has a lot of influence. They have a lot of people who are following them. Why do people have a large following? Because they're shining on their own inner fluence and that fluidity. And even the word like intuition. This is just me sitting with myself and just really listening to that inner self. The word intuition. We pay for tuition, which is not bad. It's not to say that people who go to school, it's, you can learn a lot from college, but intuition you don't pay for. And I was like, yeah, that's so true. It's like, where does intuition come from? It's You're paying other people for their own intuition, and that's the difference, I think, between a leader and a boss. A boss isn't running on intuition. They're running on, the attention they get or the position of power, versus a leader is someone who gets you to run on your own energy. He has no problem telling you what to do, but it's not telling you what to do for the sake of telling you what to do. It's to get you to get hungry within yourself. It's someone who, so I can tell you, for example, 2 + 2 = 4, 2 + 2 = 4, and I can get you to repeat it. Or I can say, okay, here's 4 marbles. Now, do you understand why 2 + 2 = 4? You go, oh, I get it. And now there's that passion to teach it, versus parroting. This idea, I think, in our culture, I mean, I hated memorization. I hated that in school, just remembering. Like, I'm sure even you can relate, as far as, there's a difference between um, giving someone a sheet of a recipe versus I want to show you why each ingredient, what this, and like actually showing people how to create their own recipes and mixing and playing with ideas, versus just, this is like, because I can look up recipes. I've looked up different recipes, but I've noticed that when I would do that, it was like, if I follow one recipe versus another, I'd have to play with it a little bit to really to make a good recipe. You're not going to just get a good recipe from copying somebody else's recipe, right?
I mean, recipes are a sore subject for me, because I think most people who write recipes suck at writing recipes. People forget about the number one rule of recipes, and it's you're writing it for somebody else, right? People forget that they're writing a recipe for somebody else to make without you being there. And I think that there's a lot of work that is missed and a lot of work that's skipped, because when they write that recipe, they're writing that recipe for themselves. There's a lot of implied to a recipe. There's a lot of detail that's missing. And instead of giving it to somebody and saying, hey, does this recipe leave you with any questions? They just say, no, this recipe's good, and then when somebody makes a mistake based off the recipe that they gave them, most chefs get upset. Well, hold on, it's your fault. You're the one who's communicating that information and never made sure that it was received properly.
Mm.
And so for me, I I see the recipe, or I see the recipe as a foundational tool, right? People miss this, and it drives me insane, but my profession, hospitality, cooking specifically, is a craft. It's a craft before it's an art. And in order for anything to be art, you still have to take care of the craft components. Food has
Mm.
to be delicious first. Food has to be made to be edible. Food needs to be crafted and executed properly. It needs to be hot. Food needs to be served hot. There's foundations that need to be
Yes.
followed before it should be Instagram pretty. We live in an Instagram pretty culture, so it lacks, like so many other things, it looks great, lacks substance.
Well said.
Everybody does it for the perception of it, but the craft part of it is exhausting. It's messy, it's tiring. The only way to get through being a great craftsman, and that's what my title is as a certified master chef, I am considered a master of my craft. But do you know what that helps me realize? Helps me realize that I don't know much. The more I know, the more I recognize, like, damn, there's a lot for me to know.
Yeah.
And you can't know it all, right? And that's one of the things I love about my field. But I am a master craftsman because I understand the technical foundation of what makes great food. So when I give you a recipe, I'm giving you that experience, that craftsmanship that I've built into developing my recipes, to crafting my cuisine. The other part of craftsmanship and the other part of mastery is passing that on to the next generation, right? If you look at any craft, any trade, right? You go through an apprenticeship, you become a journeyman, and then eventually, if you stay with it long enough, you become a master of that craft. Great book to read if you haven't, Mastery by Robert Greene.
All right. Cool.
Phenomenal book. And it puts a lot of the vocabulary to this, and it applies to all professions. War, generals in war, right? You need to, whether it's called an apprenticeship or not, go through an apprenticeship of learning, of not knowing anything and having somebody teaching you the fundamentals, so you don't waste 15 years figuring it out on your own. Like, our craft exists because we pass it on from one generation to the next. And when you do that, you ensure what's most important gets carried on by that generation to the next generation, to the next generation. It becomes another example of true mentoring, or even fathering, right? Because as a father, your job is to pass on your wisdom to the next generation so that they can do better. But because so many people have kind of forgotten this knowledge, forgotten this wisdom, we end up with lack of substance.
Yeah, it's very true. You made me think of two things with that, and one is a similar analogy to that is, in order to, as you said, it's with everything, right? So for a basketball player, for example, you got to have to drill. You're going to have to learn how to do 2-pointers, learn how to do 3-pointers, learn how to dribble your right hand, your left hand, and you're gonna have to miss a lot of shots. And then when you get that down, then you can get into that flow state where you have that, it's there, it's a
You've got the
foundation.
mechanics.
Mechanics are there,
Right.
You're not going to be the next Michael Jordan if you say, I don't need to learn how to dribble on the left hand. Now you have to learn those mechanics, and then you become your own. And the other thing was Gary Vee. What did he say? He said, put out content. Don't look for that perfect, like, and I'm sure you could relate in your field, right? It's like not that perfect recipe.
Mm-hmm.
Put that content out. Put out you know, that the process, it's really loving the process, and
Mhm.
um, to be humble when you have nothing, and also when you have everything, to be humble, because you can still learn from other people who are I don't want to say lesser than you as you grow in your field, but people who are lower
Who
on
aren't
the
as far along.
correct. And the same can be said when you're in that lack state, to really be appreciative, to grow, and to really appreciate where you're at, even if it's not the highest. And then also being at that higher state, to really appreciate where you're at, you know, and not let it get to your head. But definitely foundation. That's another important key thing that you just brought up, is that found. And as that in grounding camp, he talks about the patriarchy,
Mhm.
and that's has such a strong, you know, when people hear the word patriarchy, but what does that connect to? The word pattern, right?
Mhm.
Pattern, to have the pattern, the foundation. And, you know, it becomes very politically, you talk, you know, patriarchy, matriarchy, you know, but yeah, pattern. It's a very interesting, the blueprint. You need the blueprint.
Well, and there's no way to just figure out the blueprint. Or you could, but you could spend your lifetime figuring out the
Mm,
blueprint. If you really want to make progress in life, then you need to pick up, the other clues that have been left behind. There's I can't even remember who said it, but it's stuck out in my life. Like, success leaves clues. Just does. Might have even
yeah,
been Tony Robbins that said that, but
yeah,
success leaves clues. And if you're clever enough to look at them, like, you can learn a great deal. And it can save you from making making those mistakes on your own. That can save you money. It can save you time. It can save you any number of resources that are limited, right? We've got, God willing, and we have no control over this, but if you're lucky, you've got 100 years on this earth, right? And I feel like right around the time of like 22, 23, life starts going a whole lot faster.
mm,
And like I said, I look back and I can't believe that it's been 20 years since I graduated college.
yeah,
Like, what it's fascinating to me.
yeah,
Um, and I'm humbled by that. But at the same time, I'm looking at it and I'm realizing, okay, like, I'm reaching the peak contributing age of man, right? That's Henry Ford believed it. Carnegie said the same thing, right? 40 to 65 is like the peak contributing years as a man. And now I'm like, okay, well, I have no choice. Like, I've got to hit this 100% and head on, and hope, and just make the most of it, because at this point, I've known people who've passed at 40, at 45.
yeah,
Life is short. So why am I going to waste my time reinventing the wheel? Because it's going to make me feel better. I don't think that's going to make me feel better. Leaving a pile of money for my grandchildren is definitely going to probably make me feel better. Providing a moral foundation for my family, that's going to make me leave this world proud.
yeah. Meaning over everything. Absolutely. 100%. Well,
Purpose.
I guess on a final note, on a lighter note, because I we can go into all the depth, and I love it so much. I appreciate you for really sharing, you know, a lot of wisdom that in this talk. But what's your favorite meal to cook? And I know that's probably there's probably so many. Maybe starting out, what was your favorite food growing up, or you know, and anything else you'd like to share with people, you know, who are in the culinary field, or even just, you know, people at home, just, you know, maybe some of the products that you share on, which like I said, I'll put on the Linktree, that maybe a good place to start, where people are like, you know, I want to eat healthier. Or I want to, you know, I'd like to make better meals. I want to mix it up. Where
Mhm.
can they find that with you, and any advice
Well,
you can give?
okay, I'm going to work backwards on your
Okay.
question, because I'm going to buy myself some time to figure out what I want to tell you that's my favorite thing to cook, because
Okay.
I suck at answering that question. It just depends on the day.
Yeah.
Um, my company, my business, what I'm doing now, my purpose is to provide tools and resources to work with professional chefs, culinarians, cooks, to find their purpose and to live it, to leave a legacy. That's my goal, right? To pass on as much knowledge as I have and as much as I can, and really create uh, a high performance chef, somebody who's going to leave a legacy behind and make the food industry better for everybody. That's my goal. I want to see the hospitality better than when I found it. I think that's a reasonable goal, actually. I want to change the world, but I don't see it as impossible, and nor does that even scare me. I could care less. For eating healthy, I think we as a Western culture have lost sight of, and unfortunately are often steered in a direction different than the truth. And the truth is, what you put into your body yields a result. Your body reflects what you eat. Your body reflects what you drink. Your performance reflects what you eat. Your performance reflects what you drink. If you drink soda, you're going to be tired. You're going to end up going through bouts of sugar rush and crash all day long. It's inevitable. If you eat food that's toxic to your body, eventually you're going to have to pay the price. It's going to be in being overweight, unhealthy, organ failure. It's inevitable. So pay attention to what you eat. And I would say for anybody who's looking to immediately improve their lifestyle, cut out sugar, cut processed sugar out of your diet. Just start there. And just replace it. Replace those calories with something else. I'm not saying diet soda is the right thing to do either, because artificial sweeteners are absolutely toxic that the body can't process. And just don't lose sight of the fact that what you put into your body yields an outcome. There is no more intimate relationship with your physical health and your physical being like food. Like literally, what you eat becomes your cells. Like it becomes you.
Yeah, let
And
thy food be
people,
thy medicine.
right. And people lose sight of that. And it just drives me absolutely insane. Like if you're eating terribly, that is going to impact your brain function, the way you see, your eye deterioration, the way you taste food, like everything about you, right? And that's one of those things with COVID that has really just driven me through the roof, right? Is there's for some reason the people who speak up about taking care of your health and taking care of your body and having a healthier lifestyle, their voices seem to be turned down a little bit.
Very amygdala based.
Well, it's crazy because they're like the hacks now, but that's not at all the case. Like if you're healthier, you're going to have a healthier immune system. So like for me, what I used to train my cooks and my sous chefs is when we get into the holidays or when we get into the cooler seasons, start incorporating vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc into your diet, right? As supplements. When you do that, you're giving your body infinitely more chances at overcoming any sickness or imbalance or dis-ease that might come from the season or might come from being exhausted. And so simple things, just actually take a look at what you're eating. That's a great first step. It's a tremendous first step. And what's left there? I think you asked me what I love to cook.
Well, what other, I guess the next thing is the products that you have. And I would say, what products that you have for the individual like me who wouldn't be interested in pursuing a career and being a chef, but I would be interested in learning how I can cook better meals. And people who are watching, what programs that you offer, like maybe different recipes or that people can look into. And also on the other end, people who are looking to become chefs, what products that you have that would give others value.
Well, I would definitely say, you got to focus on a niche, right? You can't be all things to all people.
Sure.
So for me, my niche are really advanced home cooks,
okay,
and professional chefs, right? So my programs are culinary programs based on tweaking your individual culinary program, working on your mindset, developing your menus, a lot of the nuance of becoming a great chef and evolving, the steps that go into documentation, tracking progress, and then being around community of chefs who are working to do the same thing. So really it's about high performance chefs. My coaching component is definitely geared towards performance and evolution. I work with men in different industries by all means. Chefs tend to be my focus because I spent 26 years as one.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of life experience behind me, and I like to work with, clients who are looking to make a change in their life. Those services are far from free. Um, but the goal is to make sure that we're getting the obstacles out of your way to help you really make a difference in your own life. And if you're committed to doing that, then, perhaps you're interested in making an investment that's going to change your life. Um, I have some other products that are, eventually coming to market. I'm working on them, but I tend to put too much on my plate, so to speak. There's some kitchen equipment that'll be coming in the near future, custom work stuff for pastries and for competition. And then my platforms. YouTube is about Michelin star techniques. So, what do Michelin chefs do to make a puree, and why is that puree different than anybody else's pureed vegetables that are cooked and thrown in a blender and pureed? Well, why do I use, a hydrocolloid suspension to keep it nice and smooth and keep it in suspension and make it silky, creamy, and beautiful, right? It's I can nerd out on food all day long because, well, again, that's been my profession. That's been my passion for so very long. That's what I share there. So that's my outlet there as kind of like an avenue to see what everything else is. So I also actually, you know what? I just started a subscription platform where we I teach a live lesson. It's kind of like this, right? Like I'm with a group of students. I teach a lesson um, based on the content that the group decides that we want to focus on that week. So like last week, it's funny. Last week I taught a lesson on short circuiting fear and emotion, and was able to put it in the context of being in the kitchen. So on Sunday nights, I get the group together. We do that. I post the replay. I answer live Q&A, and then I do the same thing on Monday as well. And then this Sunday, I'll do a whole nother lesson with my group. And then I'll continue to do that every week until, well, probably the end of time. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
Awesome. And then I guess the last thing, I mean, maybe go back to when you were 14. What was your favorite, like what dishes do you like? I mean, let's not make it one thing, but
It's tough, man.
it's
Like
tough.
I've had a cool career. I've traveled the world. I would say that as an overall generality, like I love food for the way it's supposed to be, where it's from. I had the good fortune of being a private chef for about a year and a half, and I got to travel a lot. I found myself in Thailand, and I remember eating dishes in Thailand. And I remember having pad Thai in Thailand for the first time, and I've had pad Thai in the U.S., but in the U.S. you get kind of more often than not you get like a knockoff variety of pad Thai. But when you're in Thailand and you have pad Thai, it makes so much more sense as to what the dish is. And so for me, it's about authenticity,
Mm,
and knowing that it's about authenticity. It helps drive home that idea of solid fundamentals, right? Like it's staying true to the fundamental. Like one of the big arguments right now in my profession is about terminology, because if you call it something, it should be something, right? A dice should always be a dice
yeah.
with the same dimensions every single time. It should be perfectly cubed on all sides. That's a dice. And if it's not that, then it's not a dice, right? And we're kind of at this point now where wishy-washy is becoming popular.
Mm,
And so, well, like it's kind of a dice. Well, no, if it's kind of a dice, then it's not a dice. But we as a culture are becoming so averse to rightness and wrongness that we're letting anything slide. And you can't have standards and allow for everything to slip by and expect that quality is going to continue to go up.
yeah, precision and articulation are not something to dismiss,
Right. The moment that you do, you can expect for quality to go out the window. Like
Yeah.
there's no way around it. And so like, authenticity is a big thing for me. So now when I cook, yeah, I like for it to be as authentic as possible. Like I've got a mortar and pestle. And if I make pesto, I make pesto in a mortar and pestle because that's the way it should be done. And it tastes thousands of times better than anything that's done in a RoboCoo or a blender or, a food processor. And it's not the same. But if you're going to put in the work and you're going to do it, you may as well do it to stay as authentic as you can. And the end result shows that. It's just most people have been really removed from that end result. They don't understand the thing in order to replicate it.
I like that answer. I was looking for a food. I actually appreciate more what you said. It's not even the food, it's the authenticity of it. It's the blueprint of it. It's the quality of it that you're around. So it's not just one thing. And thank God, right? We wouldn't want one meal, you want to taste different foods. So,
right. And I'd rather taste them for what they are, and I think last point, and I'll stop talking, I promise.
No, not at all.
Is, before trying to change something, understand what it's supposed to be.
I like that. It's a good place to end. And on a final note, where's the best place for people to find you? Is it YouTube? Is it all like you have a
my
specific
Linktree is probably the best place, right? I do webinars pretty monthly, actually monthly. I've got a calendar, Calendly, so we can schedule appointments. If like individualized professional coaching is something that you're looking at diving into, we can set up an appointment. We can talk about that. If you want to take a little test drive of one of my courses, it's there in the Calendly, but all that stuff's in Linktree instead of giving you, 8 different things.
Yeah.
Or it can get you to my Instagram, where I try to stay, pretty motivating in the culinary world and talk about the things that I've learned, the lessons that I've learned, so that really, like, my mantra is to make sure that everybody who's starting now is starting where I'm at, not where I started, because it's a fucking waste of time.
Yeah. All right. Agreed. So I will put that link in the description, and I'm glad to have you on. Hopefully we can talk again soon.
Well, thanks, Mike. It was a great conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.